Okay, so yesterday we were doing some boxes on top of boxes and underneath boxes, and I was just going to finish those up real quick today because I kind of realized that my paper was slightly off the camera, so I just had these last two sides to add to this box, and then I created the corner to the vanishing, or to the box underneath the box, and I just need to add now my guidelines to the vanishing points. From the top and the bottom. And then because this box, it's basically, again, if I flip it, this box is on top, this box is underneath, but when I'm done I'll flip it and you'll see that it's the same rules no matter what. So step 1 is to create the corner, which I did. Step 2 is guidelines to the vanishing point. Step 3 is to make the sides of the box. And then step 4 is to erase all unwanted guidelines. And now that that box is in front of that, I'm going to have to erase what's behind it. And then step 5, sometimes you need and sometimes you don't, but this one looks a little weird, so I'm going to need to add the bottom. So from the opposite vanishing point to this corner, I'll add that and that to make the bottom. So you can see, now this one here, I didn't add the top. Maybe I could try, but it's so close to the horizon line that I'm really not going to see much of the top. It'll just kind of look like a double line. I can add it. It's kind of just right along the ruler there. So you kind of are at pretty much at eye level with that one, so you really don't see the top too much. But if I flip this, you'll see that it works the same both directions. So the rules are always the same. First step is create a corner. Second step, guidelines to vanishing points. Third step, add your sides. Fourth step, erase, and I probably could have done a better job erasing here, but that's okay. And then fifth step, if you need the top or the bottom of the box, you can add it using your opposite vanishing points. So today we're going to play with some details. We are going to add some roofs, we're going to add some windows, some doors. I'm going to show you how to do a box next to a box, which is a little bit trickier than a box on top of a box, and some trees and sidewalks and all that. So we're going to start with windows, and we're going to do it the same way we did one point perspective, where we do windows above and doors below. So the windows, I'm going to make one window on this side and one window on this side. Now any window, the top and bottom I make on this side is going to go to the vanishing point that's closest to it, and any window I make on this side is going to go to this vanishing point because it's closest to it. So for the tops of the windows, I'll place my pencil where I want it to go, line it up with my vanishing point, and add the top of the window. Then I'll say, okay, I want the bottom of the window to go there, and I'll do the same thing. And then I will double and triple check my ruler to make sure that it's straight up and down. To make the window. If I want to be sure the window on this side lines up perfectly, I could continue these lines out, and then when I make sure that my so as I was saying, if I want the windows to line up, I could continue this line through to the corner, and then when I'm on this vanishing point to create the other window, I would just make sure it hits that same height of that line if I want them to line up, and the same height of that line to know where the top and the bottom should go. Then I can get rid of these and I can add my verticals to finish that second window. I got a window on this side and I got a window on this side. So now we're going to do the same thing we did in one point perspective, which is we're going to recess the windows There's pretty much the same, but there's a slight difference in 2-point perspective than there is with 1-point perspective. Now in 1-point perspective, if we're doing the window, and then if we're doing anything on the right-hand side of the building, I'm going to start with the upper right-hand corner. In 1-point perspective, you take this line to show the thickness of the wall and you make it horizontal. In 2-point perspective, you are going to take the corner of that window and you're going to do just like the top or the bottom of a box where you go to an opposite vanishing point. And the same will be the case on this window. So you'll see that the line that separates the wall from the ceiling in that little apartment up there is from the upper left-hand corner, because I'm on this side, and I'm going to be going to this opposite vanishing point. It's sort of like you're seeing the underside of the box, which is step 5 to draw the underside of the box, which means you're going to be using opposite vanishing points. So let's go ahead and I'll do it the same way. I'm going to add from this corner to this vanishing point, however deep I want that wall to be, and that's up to you. Then wherever I decide it's going to end, and I think that's a little bit long for what I want, so I'm going to decide it goes to there. Then I'm going to add the vertical. And then with this last little bit, it once again has to utilize the vanishing point. So I'll go from here to this vanishing point over here to add the thickness. So that's just a little bit recessed, so it looks like there's a little window ledge or a place you could set a plant. And again, adding a little bit of shading sometimes kind of helps so that you can see it. It's a little more shading than I wanted. So that can kind of help you see it. Now the other one, you can see that I made it so it was more like the garage that I did before, so it goes all the way back, so it's kind of like a big picture window here, and you're seeing into the apartment. So with that one, instead of stopping my line short, I'm going to follow the same idea, but I'm just going to let my line go all the way back to the vanishing point. So from the upper left-hand corner to the opposite vanishing point, I'm going to draw the line, and I'm going to let it go all the way back. Again, the little details help you see it. So I had put some paint on that wall. I had drawn in a light fixture. And those are just on a horizontal surface, so I'm not doing anything in perspective. I'm just drawing that straight. If I do something on a surface like this, like a picture frame, then I would have to make the tops and the bottoms of the picture frame go to the vanishing point to have it make sense so that it lined up with the ceiling. Otherwise, it's going to look like you hung your picture crooked. Okay, so now let's do the doors, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to recess this door, and then I'll let this one be the garage, but everything that I'm doing here is below the horizon line. So up here, I'm going to go from the upper corner to the vanishing point, but down here, I don't see the ceiling because it's below my point, my eye level, so I have to go from the lower corner to the vanishing point. So, setting up the tops of the doors, I will use the vanishing point closest to me. And then I can just add the sides. And I don't really have to add the bottom to the doors because I'm not doing stairs. It just ends at the level where I've already made this line. So in the first set of doors, I'm going to make it like a little alcove here with the double glass doors and like maybe the brick wall showing there. So in order to do that, I'm going to go from the lower, instead of the upper, the lower right-hand corner, back to this vanishing point here. And because this one's just recessed a little, my line's going to be little. Then I'm going to add the vertical, which is going to show the bricks of the wall. And then with the part that's missing from this corner, I'm going to go back to the opposite vanishing point. And then I can erase this little part out if I would like. The details I just draw, little handles. If I want it to look like glass, I can make it like reflective. My bricks on 2-point perspective, the horizontal is going to go to a vanishing point. In 1-point perspective, it is horizontal. So remember your rules that I gave you guys, and you'll see that on the back of it, it says that in 2-point perspective, horizontals go to a vanishing point. In 1-point perspective, horizontals go to a vanishing point if they face the street, and they just go horizontal if they're facing the viewer. So if you forget, the best thing about perspective is like, when you're drawing it, if it looks weird, then something's weird. So you just have to go back and kind of look at the rules and see what you did wrong, and you can usually fix it yourself. All right, so now I'm going to do this one here, which is I'm going to make more like a garage. I'm going to use this vanishing point from the lower left-hand corner, and I'm going to allow that to go all the way back in space. I can add some shading. When I make verticals, this is like where that cross contour or the mark making really matters. When I make my marks, if I'm drawing a vertical surface like a wall, I make vertical lines. And if I'm drawing a flat surface, I'm going to kind of utilize this, follow the same parallel, which would go to that vanishing point to make it look, make it a slightly darker value, to make it look like it's flat. If I start doing weird shading lines diagonally, I'm going to lose the effect that I am going for. Okay, so that's windows and doors. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put on top of this, this box on top of the box, we'll do a roof, okay? And when you do a pitched roof like this, it can be challenging to figure out how to make it look like it's standing up straight, but there's a trick to it. So when I'm going to add a roof to something, the first thing I do is I create, if I know that the pitch of the roof, let's just say I know I want the roof to be like this, right? But I want to make sure it's correct. This is the pitch of the roof here. And I need to make sure that the top of the pitch of the roof lines up with the center point here. And the best way to find the center point is to draw an X. Now I don't have a bottom of this particular box, so I could draw it in, but I kind of have to imagine if I'm seeing through the building that the square would finish something like that. And if I want to be super precise, which I probably should be, then I could really check and make sure that I got that pretty good angle. All right, so now when I make the X from the corner to the corner, and this corner to this corner, I know that the center point of what that box is would be right there, so the pitch of my roof should be directly above it. Now sometimes like I just kind of got lucky and I eyeballed it pretty well, but sometimes you don't eyeball it well and then your roof looks weird, like it's slanting back or tilting or it's doing something funny. So if you can't get the tilt right by eyeballing it, then make an X on the box, draw a line straight up and down, and then you know how to finish the triangle for the pitch of the roof. Now I can erase all the stuff that kind of helped me get there. And I'm going to add the top of the roof. Now, it's a horizontal in real life, so the rules of perspective say that horizontals, just like the bricks in real life, have to go to a vanishing point. So in 2-point perspective, I'm going to utilize this vanishing point back here, like that, and then I'm going to make kind of like I did as if this was my bird's eye view, I'm going to make sure that the back side of this roof runs parallel to the front side. So I'll use the ruler trick where I hold the ruler and I go back and back and back. And add the back side of the roof. Then you can do details to make it look, you know, fancier. You can add some thickness to it, add some shingles, things like that. If you do shingles, the verticals of this shingles should line up with the pitch of the roof. They should be parallel, just like windows in one-point perspective. And the horizontals of the roof should go back to the vanishing point. So it's just like we did when we created these buildings in the very, very beginning, and we did the windows on them so that the verticals went to the vanishing point and the horizontals followed the original shape. Same thing here. Okay, so we've got a roof, and let's add the sidewalk next. All right, so the trickiest part for me with the sidewalk is just getting it to bend in the right spot so that it looks like it's lined up with this building. So the key is that this original corner, it needs to line up with the corner of the building so that it looks like it's bending in the correct spot and it's not off. So the way I set this up is I place my ruler right back on that original line, and I just follow it all the way down to where I want the sidewalk bend to go. And then I know that's going to be basically step one, which is creating the corner, and I'm going to follow the top and the bottom of that back to my vanishing points. I'm not going to go through my other buildings, I'll skip it. And then I'm going to say I want my sidewalk to be this thick. I'll do the same thing on this other side. Once I have that established, oh, actually, you know, before I erase it, I'm going to add the curb here. So right now, I just have the tops of the sidewalks where you'd walk. I'm going to add the curb here, and since this line is already sticking down here, I'll just use it. In this one, the same thing that we did in the street level, you've got to be careful to make this line skinnier, because the further apart you make these two lines, the deeper the step is going to look when you step off of the sidewalk. Missed that. Okay. So now I'm going to erase out, and this is kind of a weird thing, and we're going to get to this when we start talking about fences versus sidewalks. Is with sidewalks, you want them to look like they're laying flat. It's basically a box with a top on it, but it's a short, shallow box and a big, long top of a box. With fences, you want them to look like they're standing vertical. So anything that's vertical, you're going to have that line stay vertical. Anything that's going to be flat or horizontal is going to go back to a vanishing point. So right now this sidewalk looks weird with this vertical line because it makes it look like it's kind of like tilting forward or something like that. So I'm going to erase that corner that I used to help me figure out where to make the bend. But I'm going to leave it here because I want the curb to be vertical. And then I'm going to create the lines for the sidewalk. So the rules that I gave you say if it is and so I'm doing a top of a box, if it is a horizontal, then it has to go to a vanishing point. So there's only two vanishing points, so sometimes you just have to play and you have to try which one. All of the lines of the sidewalk over here are going to utilize this vanishing point, and it's because it's the top of a box, which is step 5, right? Utilizing the opposite vanishing point. All of the lines of the sidewalk over here are going to utilize this vanishing point because it's going to go opposite. So watch how I do this. Vanishing point. My first one is going to line up with the house like that. Same thing on the other side. My first one is going to line up with the house, so it's going to look wide. It's going to be the widest one. Then you can progressively go back in space, and you can start just making them a little closer together as you go back. Now, for those of you guys who are like really thinking this is super cool, there is a way to actually space the lines of the sidewalk perfectly so that you get them, as they're going back in space, skinnier and skinnier, super accurate. But for now, I'm just going to say, make them, as they go back in space, let them get closer and closer together. And then on this side of the sidewalk, I'm utilizing this vanishing point, and I do the same thing where I pivot my ruler. And then for each segment, I'm going to add the segment in the curb. And I'm going to do that with a vertical line. Oh, those got, I forgot to add that curb back there. It's kind of close together, I guess. So since we're on the topic of sidewalks and fences, let's skip and let's do our fence next. So there's a couple of differences with a fence. One I already mentioned, which is you're going to keep everything vertical instead of using opposite vanishing points. But the other thing is with the sidewalk, I made it right up against the building because I want to walk out my front door and end up on the sidewalk. But in this house, I want to walk out my front door and I want to end up in the grass. I want a yard. So I have to have some space before I place it. So I'm going to do the same trick where I use the corner, because generally speaking, the fence, when you put a fence in, it follows the contour of the building, right? But this time, instead of just dropping this line all the way down, I'm going to skip, and I'm just going to decide that I want that big of a yard and I want my fence to start here. That's where my first bend in the fence is going to go. Then I'm going to do the same thing I did with my sidewalks, where I add the top and the bottom to my fence. And then I need to decide where I want it to bend back. Well, now if I bend it right here, it's going to run into the house, which is fine. Maybe there's just a fence around this spot. But if I want it to go all the way around, to create, you know, an enclosed lot all the way around the house, then I'm going to need for it to end to the left of the building. And wherever that is fine. Maybe I'll put it there. And then same thing over here. I'll end the side of it there. So now if you look, we just followed the steps. We created the corner. We had our guidelines go to the vanishing point. We put sides where we wanted them to go, and now we have to create the top of the box. The only thing is that this time I'm kind of creating a transparent box, I suppose. Oh, I should have put it back a little bit further. And that happens. Sometimes you just have to mess with it until you get it in the right spot. I want it to go further back behind the building. Depending on the material the fence is made out of, I mean, in our point of view, you kind of see through the fence. So instead of me just leaving it like a solid brick like that, I'm going to add the bottom of the fence to the vanishing point too. So I'm seeing through. Now, if it's wood and I want it to be solid, then I can cover that section up, but I would still see that part of the fence. But if it's chain link fence, or wrought iron fence or something, those details are up to you. And here, if I look at this one, it's like wrought iron. I'm just going to make my verticals and put little points on the top. If it's chain link, it's diagonals, so I just kind of make them up, crisscross. If it's wood, it's a vertical, so I make sure I make nice vertical marks. So you guys can decide on the details of what you want your fence to be made out of and play with those details. Okay, what else? Last but not least, I think we've got trees that we want to put. Oh no, we got to do that's what I should have done the box next to the box first. We're going to do a box next to the box. So I'll just do a small one on the inside of this fence so that you can see it. Now the reason that the box next to the box is a little bit trickier than a box on top of a box is because it has to break the order of the rules. In the rules, step 1 is always to create a corner. The problem is when you're creating a box next to a box, you may not know how long to make the corner so that it lines up correctly with the bottom here. So like if I'm trying to make a house with an attached garage, I need this to convincingly be connected. And if I do this step first and I don't make it exactly the right length, it's going to look like the box is up above or hovering higher than this one. Now, that could be fine if you're doing like a window well or something like that, but if I want a garage next to this, then I need to be them at the same level. So I break the rules a little bit with a box next to a box because I just go a little bit out of order. So normally I say create the corner, but in a box next to a box, I'm actually going to create the side. So like wherever I want the garage to start, I'm just going to make a small one. I'm going to create the side. Maybe it'll be like a little shed. So that is this line right here. It's technically the side of the box, not the corner. Okay? So I just created this line here, but I made it so that it's at this point. It touches the bottom. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the top and the bottom to the opposite vanishing point. And then I'm going to drop the corner. Now from that point on, I can go back to my steps and create the other side. And the top of the box. So when you're doing a box next to the box, if you want it to be at the same level, instead of starting with the corner, start with the side, then add these, drop the corner, and then go back to the rules as they were. And it'll help you make it the right height. Okay, so that's a box next to a box, so let's do trees. And you know, you can place trees wherever you want them, but it'll change, I mean, kind of how that they're done. So I could have trees down here on this side of the street, I can have trees over here on this side of the street. It's kind of up to you. I'm going to choose to kind of fill this space in down here to show you how it can sort of change depending on your point of view. So just like we did trees in 1 point perspective, I'm going to draw 3 lines. The first line is going to represent the top of the trees. The second line is going to represent where I want the bottom of the foliage or the leaves to go. And then the third line is going to represent where I want the trunks of the trees to go. So if I'm going to place trees right here, I'll do something like that. And then I'm just going to do my same lollipop trees where I do a circle and a stick. And I'm going to start with the one that's closest to me because there's going to be overlapping. Now, keeping in mind, I don't have to, it's a tree, so you know, unless they're perfectly trimmed every single day, they might go outside the lines a little. But it's still a guideline. It's a guideline. If you start making them fill the guideline too perfectly, your trees start looking unnatural. So I'm trying to stick close to my guideline. But it doesn't have to be perfectly inside the lines. Okay, so I just am going to draw as many trees as I want. And then the tricky part is that your trunks of your trees always have to be vertical. They have to be vertical. So, and it's going to come out of the center of the tree. So this one kind of messes with your head because you people want to start drawing them so that they go to the line like this. And then it looks like your trees are falling over. So it's a little tricky, but you have to remind yourself that verticals remain vertical. So when I add the tree trunk out of the center, it has to go straight down. I could make the tree trunk as thick or as thin as I want, depending on, I'm the city planner, you know, so I'm kind of like finding, and I could even exit if I want the center of the tree. Maybe that's a little skinny. Kind of the center of the tree, make a line straight down. Like that. Now, as I go back in space, the same weird thing is going to happen with these trees that happen in 1-point perspective, which I'm not finished yet because the bottom of the tree trunk is weird. It makes it look like the tree is flat because this is still diagonal. I have to erase and replace that just like I did, like the gaps in the buildings of 1-point perspective. I have to erase, 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 and replace with a curved line or a horizontal line so that that tree looks like it's firmly planted on the ground and not like a popsicle stick. I kind of got a little off center on that one. Now you won't have that many, I gotta erase and replace that one too. You won't have that many issues with your tree trunks if you do them back here because they're closer to eye level. But you know, you've got to be prepared. So with these trees, it's the same thing where I start with it in front and fill it in back. But these are almost to the horizon line, so when I draw the bottoms of them, they're basically horizontal, and they're a little bit easier because they're not over here. So you can try some trees up here if you want to. What else can I show you? Let's do a balcony and a mat here real quick, just because I got a couple minutes. So, balcony. All right, follow the steps. Create the corner, and remember when we did this in 1-point perspective, you could see that when you want it to be a window ledge, you're gonna have your corners kiss. When you want it to be a balcony, you want them to overlap. So if I'm gonna do a balcony, I want my corner to be here. Guideline to the vanishing point. I really swear by those steps because anything that you're going to make, I mean, there are a couple of exceptions, like the box next to the box, but anything that you're going to make, there's always going to be some figuring about where to start the corner and all that kind of stuff, but it really is over and over those same steps. So as you guys are working, you need to have those steps in front of you. And if you don't have the steps in front of you, and you ask me for help, I will help you, but only after I make you get the steps out and try to figure it out yourself. So keep them by you. And then this one I'm going to add a little bottom, so I can see underneath. It's the bottom of the box, step 5, and then I can add my details. If I want to do a welcome mat, it's like a sidewalk because I want it to lay flat. So I'm going to add from the opposite vanishing point to this vanishing point so that it looks like it's laying flat. I'm missing my vanishing point. There we go. I kind of got a little sloppy on that one. Let me fix it. And then I can do things like, oh, if I want to make, this is going to be like a driveway, parking garage. So if I want to make it more like a ramp instead of a curb, then I'm dealing with diagonals, and with diagonals you make them up. So I could just change these two lines to be more diagonal. Maybe I'll make it stick out a little bit further. And then it's a ramp or something into the garage versus the sidewalk. So just play with some details, like say hey, I want to try to add a balcony, I want to try to add this detail, I want to try to add something in there and see what happens, but keep your steps by you. look at them, and then on the other side of the steps are the rules, and that tells you, like, if you can't figure out where to go with the line, it'll tell you. If you're in 2-point perspective and it's a horizontal, you're going to go to a vanishing point, and there's only 2, so you got a 50-50 chance of guessing correctly, and if you get it wrong, you erase it and you fix it, okay?